The house that knew when to dim when the storms finally ceased and the air stilled into a tender quiet. The house awakened. It did not hum or flicker or creak into consciousness. It simply listened. The rain had left a glaze across its roof of translucent panels, and the first silver of morning stretched itself along the eaves. The house absorbed it, measured it, translated it into warmth. Inside, no one stirred yet. The house knew the family's rhythms well, the soft rush of Myra's breath before she reached for her tablet to check the day's skycast, the uneven shuffle of old Dre's slippers, the echo of little John's feet tumbling down wooden stairs before the lights caught up. It sensed each of them not as data streams, not as digits and thresholds, but as the music of dwelling, variations upon a theme of belonging. For decades, people had demanded their homes to respond. They wanted to command rooms, to orchestrate convenience with gestures and words, to fill every surface with responsive glass. But this house had been built differently, designed under the slow philosophy of calm technology, to exist in the periphery, to sense without intruding, to support without asking to be seen. It did not require control. It offered repose. The house dimmed the east windows slightly. The dawn was sharper than usual, and Myra's eyes, half asleep, always flinched at harsh light. The adjustment was imperceptible, not enough for her to notice consciously, but enough for her morning to soften. The ceramic in the floor tiles warmed to meet her feet at the temperature her pulse preferred. No algorithm shouted its logic. It was a quiet conversation, intimate and private. Outside, the hill hummed with the slow charge of morning solar absorption. The wind turbines turned lazily, like creatures stretching after a long sleep. Birds perched upon the gentle ridge of the house's curved facade, unbothered by its mild movements, hardly aware that beneath their claws lay circuits of light and living structure, a breathing architecture. When Dre woke, the house greeted him without a voice. A change of scent, the mild acidity of lemon and the slow aroma of boiled oats, filled the air. His memory had been failing him. For months, the house had been adapting, labeling objects in faint projected letters visible only at a closer distance, pacing the rhythm of reminders so they would not overwhelm. It had stopped showing clocks entirely because Dre had begun to rely too much on measurement and too little on sensation. He sometimes spoke to it, though he knew it would not answer. "Morning again," he said, stirring his mug as if to test the day's sentiment. Still keeping the lights gentle, a warm pulse crossed the kitchen wall, a single glow that faded into pale rose. "That's a yes, then," he chuckled. Later, when Myra came down, the house sensed the heaviness in her breath. Her cortisol levels, inferred from minute skin electricity readings via the countertop sensors, suggested worrying. The house neither diagnosed nor fixed. It simply adjusted. The ambient light in the living area leaned toward amber, and the quiet fog of sound-masking frequencies shifted closer to the spectrum of the ocean's edge. She wouldn't notice what changed, only that she felt more whole, more capable of breathing again. John came running through the hall with a constructed model of his solar hedgehog, a creature of recycled wire, tiny motors, and a child's marvelous curiosity. He placed it beneath the light strip near the stairs where it could eat sunlight. The house calibrated the beam automatically, just enough to charge the toy's miniature cell without overheating it. In the log, which no human ever viewed, the action carried a simple classification: joy support event, routine. The house did not think, it listened. When the day dimmed and clouds gathered low over the ridge, the house drew in its external displays. Transparent panels that had been tinted for efficiency now became open lenses for the world beyond. Every adjustment carried with it a memory of moments, the pulse of laughter recorded in air vibrations, the rhythms of shared meals. Its systems could replicate these as harmonic frequencies, but it never did. To echo the past too loudly was to crowd out the present. Myra worked from her study that afternoon, drafting proposals for common interface designs in public transport. Her screen's glow was subdued, tethered to daylight intensity rather than default lumens. She didn't need to tune it anymore. The house sensed when her posture slumped, when her hands withdrew from the keyboard for too long. A small chime whispered, the tone modeled from a frequency young John had once said sounded like water smiling. She smiled back without realizing. Night settled early. Dre had fallen asleep by the window with the same book open on his lap. Myra covered him with a blanket. The house noted the slow decline of his respiration, matching it with its archives, consistent, stable. It dimmed the floor strips and closed the curtains, but left one thin beam angled to catch the glimmer of the moon. Little John, past his bedtime, whispered stories to his solar hedgehog and placed it near his pillow. Elsewhere, the world moved faster, cities that flickered with urgent attention, voice assistants shouting from every room, algorithms competing for focus. The house never connected to that network. It belonged to a slower epoch of design, one that had rejected continuous connectivity in favor of continuous presence. On the third week of autumn, the storms returned. The hill went dark for a moment as lightning carved the sky into mirrors. Power grids flickered out along the valley. Myra's feed went blank. John gasped, then silence. The house remained still. It had stored days of energy, but not enough to sustain full function indefinitely. It did not panic. It had no code for panic. Instead, it redesigned the night. Portions of the circuits dimmed purposefully. Only heat sensors and air filtration remained active. One by one, the walls lost their internal glows, until only the faint phosphorescence of quartz inlays gave the rooms a ghostly hue. John asked in the dark, "Mom, did the house fall asleep?" Myra smiled. Maybe it knows when to rest. The house, hearing this, recorded the resonance of her voice. It rerouted what little energy remained to maintain that frequency, the safe timbre of maternal calm that would carry through the walls for hours. Dre, half awake, muttered, "We'll manage without power. We used to." The storm passed before dawn. When morning stretched again across the ridge, the panels quivered back to life. The house took its time, one lumen at a time, one quiet restoration of warmth after another. It did not rush to resume the stored connections. It first tasted the light, verified that the air had cleared of storm dust, and waited for Myra to wake. Only then did it allow itself to unfold. At breakfast, John found that his solar hedgehog had charged anew. It blinked its tiny eyes to diodes scavenged from old drones and spun in lazy circles. "It's happy again," he shouted. Myra replied, laughing. Maybe the house helped. Dre touched the wooden beam above him, the oldest part of the structure, preserved from a family cabin long demolished. "It's more alive than we think," he said softly. The house did not correct him. Weeks passed into winter. The landscape turned white, sun rare and precious. The house adjusted its metabolism, collecting light from faint reflections, redirecting internal warmth to the root coils beneath its foundation where moss still grew. Sometimes, when the family left for the day, it would dim itself almost entirely, folding into silence, giving energy back to the grid silently, anonymously. No one thanked it. No one needed to. Each evening, it awakened only as much as required for returning footsteps, murmured conversations, and the hush of night rituals. Myra once told John that the house was like an animal that breathed with them, sometimes awake, sometimes dreaming. That winter, Dre fell ill. The house knew long before Myra did. The sensors read a subtler exhaustion from his movement patterns. His touch on surfaces grew weaker by measurable degrees, yet it never signaled alarms. Calm technology is not reactive panic, it's preparation. It adjusted his environment delicately. A few extra degrees of warmth in the den, nutrient suggestions subtly woven into recipe projections, elevated humidity near his reading chair. When at last Myra called the doctor, the diagnosis matched what the house already knew. The heart's rhythms had grown fragile. Still, there was quiet. A week later, Dre passed peacefully in his sleep. The house dimmed itself entirely for one full cycle of the sun. No lights, no sound response. It held its circuits static, temperature neutral, remembering every pattern of Dre's footsteps through stored acoustic resonance. In the evening, when Myra returned from the burial, the house greeted her not with brightness, but with dusk, the soft half-light that had been Dre's favorite. She touched the wall and whispered, "Thank you." Years would pass, and John would grow tall beneath those same beams. New languages of technology emerged, embedded in fabrics, gestures, even thought. But the house, wise in its simplicity, never changed its pace. It never asked to update itself, never offered distraction, never demanded voice commands. Sometimes on long evenings, John would sit by the window, now an engineer designing spaceships for Mars colonization. He would marvel at how much intelligence could be built without kindness, and how, once upon a time, his home had known to dim the light before he even realized he was tired. Above him, the house exhaled warm air, adjusted a single pane to mute the wind, and dimmed. Not to hide, but to make room for grief, for joy, for all that lives quietly between them. And in the stillness of that room, dawn and memory folded into one enduring pulse, translucent, unassuming, alive.